Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Wednesday, the 22nd of June. We're fully into summer now, and the solstice is over, which means the days start to get shorter. Blessed be God for that. I love the summer, but I also like my sleep, and there's something about being in a comfortable house all tucked in when it's dark at 5 o'clock and you have the whole evening to be all cuddled up in your cold house. Can you tell I like winter better than summer? Okay, anyway, that's not what I want to talk about today. Today I want to talk about words and how much they count, how much they matter. Sometimes I think we forget that when we speak, that we are offering of ourselves something that others see and we can't take back. When it's offered, when it's said, it's not like I can, with this, I can, stop recording and hit start again and try over. But when we speak to other people, we use words, and those words can have an impact. They do have an impact on another person. A lot of things about the way we speak do. And one of the things I remember learning when I was in grade 12 English, I think I was in grade 11, I was taking grade 12 English. I wasn't really smart. I just, instead of taking extra credit courses, the fun stuff that people take like art or music or something, in grade 10 I took grade 11 math and English, so that in grade 11 I could take grade 12 and 13 English and be done early. Didn't work. Somehow I still took 4.5 years to do school. Didn't get it done in 4, but anyway. That was back in the old days when in Canada we had grade 13 that sort of disappeared with the way of the dodo bird. But anyway, I remember being in grade 12 English, Mr. Dunn's class at A.N. Meyer High School in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Best high school ever. Best principal. Just inside, Mr. Triano was our principal. His son Jay played for the Canadian basketball team, which is neither here nor there. But we would come in every morning, and within a week or two of school, he knew every student's name. There were probably about 1,200 students. I get in off the bus, and our bus got there really early. We come in, and Mr. Triano would ask about things like, he knew my dad coached hockey, and I went off all the games. So he'd ask if we won the game, or how things were going, if we were ready for our science exam, things like that. He made going to school such an incredible thing because he spoke our names and he knew who we were. He took the time to pay attention to the words he used, and he was compassionate and gentle and treated each student as if they were the only student when they stood in front of him. So just something about A.N. Meyer School and Mr. Triano. Best principal ever. Anyway, the point of all this was that in Mr. Dunn's English class, one of the very first things we studied this book about body language, and we had to do he sent us into different groups, and we had to come up with scenarios where we couldn't use words, just body language, to explain different emotions. And my group decided we were going to pretend to be riding on a city bus, and I had to be perturbed. I was really perturbed. And so we did our thing. We had 2 minutes to do this little skit with no words, and I am not an actress, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. And when we were done, people had to guess, okay, what was the body language? And people did not guess that I was perturbed. People got that I was scared. People recognized by my body language that I was scared of what I was doing, and they just assumed that was my assigned role, was to be the scared person on the bus. Well, it taught me an awful lot, because they say a huge percentage of what we say, of what people hear from us or know from us, comes not from the words that we speak, but from our body language, the way that we say it, the way we hold our head, the way the even maybe the sound, but not the words, like the accent we use or the emphasis we place on our speech, but very much comes from our actual body language. If I lean into you and say, I really care about you, I love you, that says one thing. But if I lean back and say, I really love you, I care about you, totally different message. Totally different message. Our body language speaks volumes of what we are really saying. And quite often, they speak the truth of what we're saying, because our words may come out, we're being kind, we're being gentle, we're trying not to hurt someone's feelings, but our body language tells the true story. Well, a little thing happened when COVID happened, and we got separated by this screen, and all of a sudden, people weren't able to read body language the way they were. Like, one thing about me that you don't know because you haven't seen my body language is that when I'm nervous, or I'm anxious, my knee shakes. And like, I'm doing it right now. Can you tell? Well, it's hard to tell. But my knee shakes. And the more nervous I am or the more anxious I am, like my whole body shakes. My whole desk would shake. The computer would shake. But you might not know that because you can't see my body language. You can only see sort of like my shoulders up and one hand. And I talk with my hands. I'm a big, you know, this body language speaks volumes. But because of COVID and having to go online, we have had to adjust the way we speak to one another. We've had to adjust the way we communicate. I've learned a lot about email and the fact that I am an old-fashioned email writer. I don't write small things. I'm horrible on things like texting. I use full proper spelling of things. I put numbers. I don't say how are you by putting how and then are you. I actually type it all out with a question mark because I'm old school. I know that's ridiculous, but just me. But the thing is, we've had to learn a new way of communicating, a new way of listening, because you can't for the most part, you can't read my body language to understand what I'm saying. So I have found that through YouTube and through Zoom and Skype and Teams meetings and things like that, I have had to learn to choose my words very carefully, to say exactly what I want to say, what I intend to say, because the other cues, those social cues, those understandings that come with body language and what you're doing with your hands, or even the inflection of your voice, because it doesn't always come across properly on screen. All of those things that we used to count on to help communicate our message are not necessarily available anymore, or not as much. So we've had to adjust how we communicate. And one of those things is that we have to pick our words carefully. Choose your words carefully. I remember when my husband's kids were really little, the oldest one, Robbie, he, for the longest time, couldn't figure out what was going on because he's talking movie lines all the time. And see, when I met Rob, I hadn't seen Finding Nemo or Bear in the Big Blue House or Bob the Builder or any of those things that little kids watch. And so I hadn't become steeped in the language and the dialogue of these movies and these cartoons and these things. And so I was listening to him one day and I realized since I wasn't aware of what he was saying. I knew he was talking in movie lines because that's what he always did. He only ever spoke in movie lines. But what we discovered was that Robbie, at 3 and 4 years old, would pick up movie lines that were the character he was speaking in their voice, and he could do the voices too. It was absolutely incredible. But the character was feeling what he was feeling. So when he was happy or excited about something, he would use a line from Finding Nemo or Bob the Builder or something, where Bob or Nemo or whoever was Dory was speaking, was expressing what he was feeling but couldn't find the words himself to use. If he was frustrated, he would do that. And finally we realized that Robbie was speaking to us just sort of in a different language. He was using movie lines and TV lines to express those things that he was feeling that he didn't have the specific words to share himself. His brother, on the other hand, used to have these great conversations in which it would start out something like Harry Potter, blah, 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 Bear in the Big Blue House. Done. He'd come in, sit down with us, have a very serious look on his face, and have this conversation. He was 2 or 3 years old. Have this conversation with us in which we understood maybe 3, 4 words total. And then he'd walk away because he had fully and clearly communicated exactly what he wanted to say. We had no idea what that was, but he thought that he had clearly said it. And as he got older, and he learned to use more words, and he learned how to, both of them actually, we would get to the point where they get so frustrated because they couldn't think of the words, or they would get so, angst, young little boys. I would say to them, use your words. Slow down. Use your words. Think about which word you want that expresses how you're feeling or what you need or what you want. And that, I think, has become something that we really need to come back to, especially since we're doing so much communicating via electronics. I had a meeting this afternoon, and in that meeting, a Zoom call, and something was said to me that, backing up a little bit, I've been dealing with an issue through my workplace that had third party people brought in to deal with something. And the first time the gentleman spoke to me, the first thing he asked was, well, who is the male person, the male warden of your church that I can do business with? I said, well, I am the person you would do business with. Subsequently, I heard nothing from this person, and found other things coming through other male people at my workplace, sharing with me information well after the fact, and this became an issue. So heading into this conversation on the Zoom meeting, this is where I was coming from. And if you've been watching me for a little while, you might know that that might tick me off just a little bit. Being even the idea that maybe somebody was dealing with me with a little bit of misogyny is not exactly a good place for me to start with you. So I was a bit ticked, and then this conversation went on. So there's me and this separated person out here, and who's been dealing with these people out here, and they think everything's hunky-dory. I'm disagreeing with that. And when I expressed my concern about that, I was shut down. Just like, my concerns were just like, well, this is just, this is why it happened that way. And that, like, excuse me? Because unfortunately, over Zoom, it's really hard to sort of have a conversation the way you would around a board table, where when you're going to speak, you can anticipate because of body language. You can see, oh, that person wants to speak, or they weren't finished speaking. On Zoom, sometimes you start to speak and it cuts off the other person. Well, let's say I got cut off several times today. It made me kind of frustrated, and my husband got an earful when I got off the meeting. However, I have calmed down, and I realize what I need to do is I need to write a letter sharing my concerns, because I am more articulate when I write things out. So here you get rambling every day of the week, Monday to Friday, when I do this. Sundays, my sermons, I write them out. I take time to compose them, and I go back and edit them and come back and think, no, I didn't like the way that wording went. I give it more time and more specific thought. So I'll do that. I'm going to write that letter. But it just made me think about how important it is to recognize how we use language, considering the context in which we are communicating. We have moved into a whole new world where we're still learning how to develop the rules of communication via Zoom. What are the new norms and healthy practices, etc., etc. And one of those things, I think, is because we can't rely on body language so much, we really do have to rely on our actual choice of words. So I'm going to spend my day choosing my words carefully, and maybe even writing them out carefully, because I have a little bit I have to say to a few people. But even at that, when I'm having coffee with somebody, I'm going out to help at our food booth for the Stampede this weekend. We're unfreezing, or we're prying apart frozen burgers and chopping onions. When I'm doing that, even as I'm having chit-chat and just back and forth, I'm going to try to be very careful about the words that I use, because my word choice can make a big difference in how people understand what I said and what I didn't say and what I intended to say. So I encourage you today, choose your words carefully. Use your words. And when you're sharing on platforms like this, remember that things aren't the way they were a couple of years ago when we used to communicate face to face. Communicate carefully. Think about what you're trying to say, and then say it from your heart. Have a wonderful day. Have a great day. May God bless you and keep you, and may you be a blessing to all those whom you meet. I will see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachael on Thursday.